Come to Brianne Moore's first novel, The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearne, which was obviously published in 1955, and there would eventually be a film made in 1987. Now, in those 30 years, there had been so many different versions of this film that could have been made. I mean, every actress was at one time or another considered for this role. Brian himself wrote a screenplay. Brian Friel wrote a screenplay. Katharine Hepburn was talked about to play Judith Hearne. I mean, there were some extraordinary things. And Irvin Kershner there, who we talked about in terms of Ginger Coffey, actually came to Belfast and, kind of location scouted, potentially shooting in Belfast. Now, the film that did happen in 1987 starred, of course, Maggie Smith and Bob Hoskins, but with one major change. So tell us about that, Dan, and how do you think that affects the film?
Yeah, I mean, it was directed by Jack Clayton, who had done A Room at the Top with Lawrence Harvey and The Innocents and The Great Gatsby. That was Robert Redford, Mia Farrow. But they moved the location from Belfast to Dublin. Now, it was 1987. Belfast was not a place where you could run about filming. It wasn't really a place you could do very much safely. So you can understand why they did it, but it took a great lump out of the book. It took the character of the industrial city of Belfast from this overshadowing and took it to a Georgian, more cosmopolitan city, even though they did show it as run down in places and that under life. But there was an element lost, I think, because of that. Having said that, two marvelous performances, winning BAFTA for both Maggie Smith and for Bob Hoskins, as this eponymous Judith Hearne, who was based on a woman who used to visit the Moores at their home in Clifton Street, called Mary Judith Keogh, who was an elderly, well, not an elderly, she was an older woman, and in those days that damning term of a spinster, a lonely woman who would have a sherry. And it was quite funny when I interviewed Brian's sisters. They said, she would come, but she never drank. And then she would have a sherry, just a soup. And I thought, she never drank, but she had a sherry. Right, okay, that's a different kind of qualification of the thing. But a brilliant...
I'm going to see if we can see a clip here, and if not, we'll move on. But let's see if we can see a clip of Maggie Smith, the great Maggie Smith, and Bob Hoskins in action in Brian's finest novel. Let's have a look.
And I've been waiting for you. Years I've been waiting. Years, every one of the 12 months. Praying for it. Hoping. A woman never gives up her hopes. There's always a Mr. Right, they say. Changing as the years go by. Well, he's tall, dark, and handsome in the beginning, and then... Well, you're not so young, and he's middle-aged, and funny-looking, and common as dirt, and... Drat anybody, and anybody so much as gives you a kind word. And that's your prince. Sent to keep you from being alone, and love, that's forgotten. You're just supposed to take him even though you know he doesn't want you. All he wants is an American quick lunch.
But Judy, we do have things in common. You're a fine woman.
Do you see me as a woman, Jim?
Why, sure. At least we're doing something together. Together something.
So's alone. Doesn't mean you're nobody. You don't exist.
As we all know, I mean, the book is a masterpiece, and it's just devastating, heartbreaking, emotional. And I think the sadness for us looking at Brianne Moore's films, Dan, and already we're getting that sense of this really eclectic career on the big screen, but Belfast is missing. There is no Belfast in the Brianne Moore cinema canon. And of all films, along comes Judith Hearne, and you think, surely, to God, and it's not, of course. And that scene that we saw there was from towards the end of the film, and they did change the ending of the novel to make it more of a happier ending. Now, you know the pressure there is in films and movies, Dan, to have a happy ending, you know, and what's your feeling about that?
Yeah, it was funny, when I did the documentary, I was in London to interview some of the folk, and I met an old friend that had acted with Michael Grandage, and he had Tom Stoppard with him, the playwright. And so I got to say hello to Tom Stoppard, which was an extraordinary moment in my life. But Tom Stoppard, in the Shakespeare in Love film, he wrote, "What the people want is comedy, love, and a bit of the dog. Give them what they want." I think there's an element of that with the film, that the book itself is too difficult for the cinema goer to handle, to leave the cinema having had their popcorn and invested time in characters, to see it end badly. So they felt, I think, they had to inject some kind of hope. And again, it would have been probably by committee too. Patricia Craig, who's one of the biographers, probably the leading biographer on Brian Moore, said Judith Hearne was the quintessential Belfast novel, and that's what made it so successful. But at the same time, I think there would be too much Belfast if it had ended as badly as it did in the book for the film. So that's why I think they veered away from it, because of the Hollywood kind of influence.